What links werbeasts, golems, and the Yethhound in 5th edition? They cannot be harmed by normal means. Bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-silvered or non-adamantine weapons cannot harm them. Why is this so unique or problematic? Well, it comes down to their impact on the average person. These are the scariest monsters in the world for a regular person, and a lot of that is a product of D&D's weird economics. So let's explore why this dumb-looking dog is the face of terror for the people of your world. The problem really stems from the facts of 5th edition's design. That is, with enough bow-wielding commoners, proficient in their weapon or not, there is really no threat that is unsurpassable. The only trouble with that is that if we're following the pricing structures of 5th edition, even a short bow costs 25 gold pieces. That's about a month of living expenses for your average person who's not living at least in poverty. A bow is an investment. It is useful for hunting, for war, for protecting yourself and protecting your family from invaders, be they man or monster. Many folks, especially those in rural areas, would see a bow as a reasonable investment, as long as it were feasible to purchase with their wage. For most others, a simple weapon, such as a sling, a club, or a staff, for the price of a couple of silvers, would suffice if and when the goblins come. After all, even a squalid lifestyle is maintained by 1 silver a day per person, the same price as a sling, especially as you can get stones and ammunition practically for free. So in a society that faces monsters and beasts semi-regularly, anyone with any disposable income at all would find themselves probably with some way of defending themselves both at range and in close combat from any invading enemy. And a sufficiently large population, thanks to bounded accuracy and damage minimums in 5th edition, could reasonably fight back against any such terrifying threat. However, without silvered weapons, werebeasts from the jackalwere to the werewolf can't be harmed, much like the Yethhound. And without adamantine, no golem can reasonably be harmed by a person with a weapon, so just get silvered weapons, or use adamantine then. It's not that simple. The greatest mechanical strength of 100 sling users is that they get 100 chances to do at least some damage. But it costs 100 gold pieces to silver 1 weapon, or just 10 pieces of ammunition. This is the same as buying 4 short bows, out of reach for your average person, especially as silver isn't more effective the vast majority of the time. Silvering a single melee weapon allows 1 of 100 people to even have a chance to harm some of these monsters, and 10 pieces of ammunition may well all go wide. So considering that your average small village or town is only going to be really able to afford 1 silvered weapon, based on its actual effectiveness in most cases, how does the world change when it comes to these monsters who are invulnerable otherwise? I have some thoughts. Firstly, it stands to reason that any sufficiently historic community that has survived a few monster attacks and has a grounding in folklore will almost certainly have a single silvered weapon stashed away, perhaps at the Lord's Manor or at the gathering point of the local militia. Although it is most likely the local feudal lord's responsibility to maintain and protect the silvered blade. Perhaps a silvered weapon is a ceremonial gift to any newly created landowner, and the older the family, the more ancient and storied the sword. Whatever the case may be, if an invasion of werebeasts is suspected, it is someone's job to fetch that silver sword. It is worth noting at this point that it is possible for regular folks to fight back against were creatures specifically in some fashion. If we take a close look at the rules, a lit torch deals 1 fire damage, if we go by the rules as written, so a mob of torch-bearing peasants might also work. but this does require the mob to be willing to get within touching or slashing or ripping distance of a terrifying werebeast, which isn't terribly wise when most of the time they will be usually using slings and arrows. Perhaps torches serve as a minor deterrent to buy some time for the silver weapon to make its appearance. Another folk practice that might spring up is in regards to silver coins. Perhaps the common folk load their slings with silver coins when threatened by a suspicious monster. This may not be terribly effective, but would at least offer some protection so long as the Royal Mint hasn't been skimping on putting real silver in their coinage. This is one of the actual advantages of not adopting a fiat currency in a D&D world, and instead maintaining the historic practice of coins being worth their weight. If the village tries this tried and true tactic of launching silver coins at a were-creature and fails because the Royal Mint has been skimping, then there's a hell of a lot more of a problem than just one village being attacked by a werewolf. This could indeed be cause for revolution. This fact alone may cause reticence among the populace in moving away from a historic coinage model, and might even lead to superstitious designs. Perhaps silver coins are shaped with points in their design instead, or have some more heft to them than the other coins, as a nod to this folk practice of slinging silver. Perhaps to be showered in silver is an insult, or speaks to suspicion about one's true nature or intentions, or perhaps the crime of defacing currency or forgery are actually treated incredibly seriously, even out in rural communities. Maybe even especially badly in rural communities. Alternatively, perhaps in the most desperate of times, a local lord will order the blacksmith to melt down all of the town's silver coins to form a rudimentary coating for arrowheads or stones. This may indeed even be a treasonous order, only to be given if pressed to the very limits of survival. But what of the beasts themselves? Well, so far we've avoided golems as they are less common, and adamantine is far rarer. Honestly, your regular person's best hope for a golem rampage is to hope that there is a wizard or an adventurer nearby, as golems are often significant challenges even for the professionals. The torch and angry mob approach might work surprisingly well, however, against at least one variety of golem, the flesh golem, which is actually probably the one most likely to be rampaging through a small village. They have an aversion to fire. Most other golems can indeed be harmed by fire and torches if an angry mob is willing to get close enough to them, except the iron golem, in which case, run. For were-creatures the case is more complex. They can blend in with citizens well enough for a time. Rituals may become established where folks cut themselves in specific ritual settings in front of their community or a witness, their bruises or scars proving that they're not turned, depending on your interpretation of what a damage immunity really does. And suspected werewolves may be subjected to rough trials indeed. Perhaps a wagon to run over their fingers, or a heavy weight placed on a foot enough to crush a normal person's. This would at least either make the suspected individual crippled in some way, which is not ideal, or prove conclusively that they are some supernatural powerful being. People may take to wearing silver on chains around their neck, as they may think that the vulnerability that were-creatures have goes as far as contact, and they may not necessarily celebrate when someone in the village undergoes a superhuman feat of survival, but may rather question anyone very heavily who has survived a deadly accident, a tree falling on them, or the collapse of a mine. After all, they have supernatural durability, or just an awful lot of luck. Which is more likely? what's the community to say? The Yeth Hound is where I think this gets the most interesting. These creatures are based on the black dogs found especially across the mythology and folklore of Britain, which have given rise to many D&D creatures, from the Hellhound to the Barghest, from the Death Dog to the Yeth Hound. Most of these come from regional tales of the black dog standing just outside civilization with a baleful howl that spells doom. It stands to reason that with the fairly obvious and unique appearances of golems and were creatures, the Yeth Hound is likely to be lumped in with some of these other black dog creatures as one of the dogs that haunts the night. And so sometimes a silver weapon will be gathered quickly for use on a stalking Barghest instead, to no significant effect except for making the slings and arrows approach less likely to even occur for certain other dark dog creatures. But this does not mean that the tradition of fetching the silver would end for these black dogs. All you need is one historically successful example of a Yeth Hound being hurt by a silvered weapon when no natural weapon could harm the flying beast, to begin an entire series of folk tales, folk practices and paranoias around these black dogs. Huntsmen may keep a silver dagger by their side when walking into dark woods, and regular folk may actually be more scared of wild dogs than other monsters and creatures of the night. A ghost, which can theoretically be harmed by regular weapons, is nothing compared to an ethereal flying dog you literally cannot harm by conventional means, even if it does have a really stupid face. From the monster's side, while Yeth Hounds and golems usually have masters, were creatures are often independent and intelligent creatures. Particularly devious ones may take great pains to steal, destroy, or ruin the few silvered weapons a village may have before orchestrating an attack. Or the masters of a Yeth Hound or a golem may seek the same goal, a removal of anything that could stop their beloved minions. Thus, not only would silvered, magical, adamantine weapons be closely guarded, everyone who was negligent around it, or who, God forbid, stole it, would face harsh punishment indeed. Most likely, a physical trial designed to kill an average person, as they're either a werewolf who will survive anyway, or an ally of some heinous monster, a herald of an invading force to come. It is also worth noting at this point that any such intelligent creatures who know their limitations and know what can harm them would necessarily seek out adventurers first, as they tend to deal in all sorts of strange magics, magical weapons, and things that can get in the way. Anyone who can cast magic would be a prime target, as well as all the silverware, of course. Depending on the frequency of such monsters in the area, it may even be an important part of folk culture to issue travelling merchants or journeyman traders with a small silver dagger, which I personally would charge about a quarter of the cost of silvering, say, a greatsword. These may be mostly ceremonial, or may, among certain sectors of society, serve as a main knife, brought along to banquets, as both a status symbol, fine tableware, and a statement piece, if well maintained. This is bearing in mind that most folks in the medieval period, worth their salt at least, would carry around their own knife if they were ever caught short and had to eat somewhere. With the pricing structure I mentioned earlier, it may even become too useful an item to pass up on for a wealthy traveller on the road. After all, it is an excellent deterrent, and a well enough polished silver dagger could even serve as a mirror in the case of vampires or gorgons, although Medusas in D&D, which is incredibly frustrating to me. Why would you do that? Why would you name your Medusa-esque creature a Medusa, not a Gorgon, when a Gorgon is clearly what Medusa and her sisters are in the mythology. It's always bothered me. Sorry. Back to the video. The only trouble with this silver dagger strategy is that your average traveller is in no way equipped to deal with any such monster, be it Yethhound or Werebeast. So any violent were creature is going to end up with quite the collection of silver daggers for themselves from the people who they kill who think they can try and tussle. They can either store or hide them somewhere people can't reach, reducing the supply in the world, sell them back to these naive fools who have no fighting chance in reality, or build the perfect cover as a paranoid individual, terrified and prepared against all sorts of monsters. In my mind and my worlds, all were creatures have some aversion to silver. It quite literally burns them to touch. So this would also be a tried and tested method to root out traitors in your midst. I know this isn't in the rules, but you should consider adopting it to add an extra element to this folk practice. It handily gives some extra added depth to the idea of crossing a palm with silver, bringing folk tradition into a brand new light in a fantasy world. The most superstitious folks will insist on paying any stranger in town up front for any work in silver, just in case. And, at least in my worlds, this only deepens the divide between elites who consider promissory notes the way of the future, and the rest of the people who still believe in the old money. This is indeed one area I see people being relatively slow to change in a fantasy world. When it's a normal person's only real line of defense, I would imagine that silver and silver coins are here to stay. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this dive into some of the weird quirks of D&D, as well as the whole spooky season series, which I think's been quite a fun thing, and I'd love to bring back next year. If you have enjoyed it, please do drop a like and subscribe, because I love overanalyzing this sort of thing, and if you want more of that, you can let me know by subscribing to the channel. In any case, have a happy Halloween if you are celebrating, and with that said, I've been Tom, otherwise known as the Grungeon Master, and I will see you in the next video.